please join me in welcoming Mark Shashoua, the CEO of Hyve Group.
How are you?
How are you?
Is that yours? I got one.
Yeah, I got it. All right. Well, I don't know if anyone. Oops. We have a nice little sizzle reel. Well, that's one heck of a backdrop.
That's fun. That's great to watch.
So welcome, Mark. For those of you who follow the RevvedUP podcast, and if you don't, you should. I recently had Mark on the podcast. We had an incredible conversation. So, Mark, I want to start at the strategic core of this, because when people look at Hyve and they look at your strategic acquisitions, they see them as very bold acquisitions. But when you and I talked, there really was a thesis behind how you go about looking for the growth, the acquisition growth for Hyve. Can you tell the audience about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, we focus very much on the end market. So what is the sector? We're not so much a massive consolidator of portfolios of shows or a geographic market share-led business. We really focus on what is the right end market that we want to operate in. Again, we're talking about revenue and everything, but there's, more and more you're seeing is that spend are going into the main event of its kind in that particular sector. So we want to be either the main event or one that could be the main event. And then it's also the type of event, right? There's an evolution over the last 15 years of, there's trade fairs, and then there's shows that I call large-scale ecosystem events. Like, I don't know if people have heard of it, but shows like Shop Talk, or John Weiner is here, the founder of many of these shows, by the way. But health for the healthcare sector. So we really look at those three things.
And just so people understand what he means by ecosystem in the event space, it's that you could have a combination of event styles or event structure within one event. So hosted buyer in a conference format along with some trade show components. So it's like an integrated portfolio of live activations.
Yes. But much senior audience, I would say.
Yes.
So it's really about the seniority of the audience. The speakers are all very, very senior within their respective end market. You'll get CEOs, you showed pictures of. It was actually quite daunting to watch the people that all go to the Time events, right? But still, we'll get a number of those type of people. Sam Altman will come speak at ASU GSV. But all those type of speakers we don't pay for, nor can they pay to speak, so we call it pay to play. But then that's what we call the Stardust. That's people there to talk about the future of that particular industry sector, or launch new products, like the CEO of Uber came to launch Uber Eats at one point. He came to Shop Talk. So it's that level, and then you get the expo area, which is obviously people looking to, or solution companies looking to obviously show off their products, and then we'll have meeting programs within it, and so on and so on.
Well, let's talk about two forms of dust in Mark's world.
I use that word
Stardust and gold dust.
Yeah.
Want to explain each one?
Okay. Well, Stardust is all those people that everybody gets excited about to come listen to. So, for example, Shop Talk is the largest event of its kind in the world, predominantly for retail, but it's for the e-commerce side of retail. That actually starts tomorrow, so we'll have the CEO of Victoria's Secrets, we'll have the CEO of Wayfair, we'll have multiple CEOs of retailers, as well as the key people within, whether it's from Meta or from Microsoft or Google or Apple, all about the transformation within that sector. We'll have Jessica Alba coming to talk about Honest, right? So that's what we call Stardust. That is what gets the entire industry going. That's what gets them all excited to be there. It's what ultimately drives what we call is gold dust. Sorry, we have all these acronyms, but this is what we call it. But gold dust are, frankly, the most important people in the room, right? Those are the ones that others are willing to pay to meet. They are the key buyers of any key end market. They are absolutely critical to an audience, to an event. And we will spend significant amounts of money within, in terms of teams and ways of getting them to come to the event. They come for free. We'll also comp their travel. I mean, it's significant. That's the gold dust. I'm sure we'll talk about all the ratios and things like that. But those are the two things that we focus on enormously. You get those two things right at that type of event. This is not a trade fair. These are these type of what I call large-scale ecosystem events. You get that right, then all the rest comes.
Yeah, so it's the hosted buyer model where companies come in and they will pay significantly to have X number of qualified meetings. And one of the things that I talk about is a lot of people want to do a buyer-seller marketplace event. It is very hard. It is really difficult. So.
We can go into that. Okay.
I was going to say, talk about that a little.
Talk about the meeting. So again, this is quite an intimate gathering, and now we're with a whole bunch of different people from different media. My world is events, right? My world is trade fairs, it's congresses, it's that type of world where we will, as much as is possible, try to operate events at enormous scale, right? Multiple thousands of people coming. I mean, you know this, but I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. I'm second generation. I went to my first event when I was 8 years old, right? So, but if you think about what we do, we bring all the right people together, whether it's buyer, seller, media, investor, whoever is the appropriate person for an end market. We spend all year round getting the right people. We bring them into an enormous building, convention center or hall or whatever, and for all intents and purposes, we wish them luck. Right? Our business, and this is something I have had a problem with for a long time, our business is predicated in the hope that the right person meets the right person. Yeah? I mean, I've been to events all over the world in every industry sector you can possibly think of, from big to small, and they all say the same thing if you ask them. They'll say, I want to meet more people, but I don't know how to find them. And so that's what we focus on, and that's what you're talking about, is the meetings program. So we spend enormous amounts of time how to connect people at the events themselves. What would happen if you could actually connect the people in advance in what we call, I think you saw it in the video, it's one of the forms that we do is the meetings program. It's 15 minutes. It's called double opt-in. The buyer and the seller agrees to meet in advance. They've pre-sourced, pre-selected. We will, at Shop Talk, run around 50,000 meetings at the event itself. We get 96% completion rate. So it's astronomical. All this is pre-agreed, pre-planned. And in this world, and again, you're talking a lot, obviously, about AI. In this world of not only AI, but also in hybrid world, where most people don't work from an office at the moment, or if they do, it's 1 or 2 days. People need to get that ROI. And so that's why we focus. That's just one of the many things that we focus on. But the meetings is probably the one that...
And there's a tremendous amount of data that is required in order to do this, not just to actually make the meetings happen, but to actually substantiate and prove the ROI after, and then continue attracting gold dust.
Yes.
So getting back to the acquisition strategy, because I thought this was really interesting, the way you look at it is clearly has to have a buyer-seller ego, very strong buyer-seller dynamic, but there's something else that you do, and Jessica actually touched on it a little. So it's not like you're going into health or you're going into education. There's an angle.
Yeah. No, the angle that we look at is that, look, the world is... What's changed over the last 15 to 20 years is I can only assume it's obvious for everybody, but it's just how tech has absolutely fundamentally disrupted every single industry sector you can possibly think of, right? For the way that they work, the way they engage, the return, I mean, you name it, tech has fundamentally changed. 15, 20 years ago it was geographic, right? But now it's all about tech. So what we do is we look at key industry sectors, but then we focus on the disruptive side. So again, he's going to get a lot of name checks, only because he's here, by the way. But where's John Weiner? Where is he? He's not here. Okay, that's good.
He's here.
Oh, I can't see. There he is. He's sitting at the back. So, they launched an event where it was 2012 called Money 2020, which if you had asked most people in the early 2010s, would you want to run an event in financial services, most people would have said you're crazy, right? But because they understood that tech was going to fundamentally disrupt payments, it was going to fundamentally disrupt the banking system. So they focused on an event that was specifically for that world and that disruption, and that would ultimately lead the conversation of where that industry was going. So that's what we look for. I had the pleasure and the privilege of buying it at the time, and learned a lot from that, and learned a lot from them. So that's when we look at industry sectors, we look at the disruptive element of it. So we wanted to be in retail. Retail is a sector that's fantastic, will always continue, will always grow, but it's the e-commerce side, it's the tech side, it's the digitization of the retail sector. When we look at healthcare, 1 in every $5 goes into healthcare in America, but we look at the health tech side. Yeah, so that's what we look at. Every single sector that we operate in, or end market, it is always the disruptive end. And then what links all of those is obviously the tech companies. So that's what we call the convergence that we're seeing. So Google now comes to, I mean, we only run 31 events, by the way. Okay, 18 brands, 31 events, yet we're one of the larger organizers in the world. We used to run a whole bunch of others, but anyway, the 31 events, and Google comes to over 20 of those 31, because those are the relevant events for them. Meta, Apple, Google, so on and so on and so on. So that's the convergence that we're seeing, is the tech companies driving the growth of those individual end markets.
So it's essentially being able to sell audience across all of the brands. So going in with a solution, a Hyve solution platform, whatever, you might be able to plug them in. And I think you mentioned like Google's like $1 million plus.
Yeah, much more. Yeah,
yeah,
they spend significantly across all our shows. And then as we grow the brands, and the brands themselves are significant in those end markets, like ShopTalk, Health, Possible, Manifest for the supply chain industry, and so on. We also run EdTech, and that's a great example. Apple does not, they have an internal edict that they don't participate at third-party events, except with a few exceptions, and we're lucky that one of them is ours. It's called BET. It's a trade fair for the EdTech sector. It's the largest one in the world. When we bought the ecosystem event called ASU GSV here in America, once Apple knew that we had effectively partnered and bought that event, Apple then signed up to that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's what we mean by effectively the convergence that we're seeing. But again, it's not just the tech, it's also the speakers, mm-hmm. right? So we get a lot of the CEOs of these companies are all crossing over. So for example, the CEO of Walmart, he has spoken at 3 of our events. So we're now able to say, here is all the different end markets that we operate in. We can talk to their comms team and say, where are you looking for thought leadership? Where are you looking for launching a new product? Where is it and when do you want to be able to get your message across? And here's all the different industry sectors and shows. So it's multi-layered.
One of the other things we talked about on the podcast is that you buy these rock star events, mm-hmm. But it's like, oh, have they already captured all the market share, right? But they actually haven't. Mm-hmm. Because what you look at is not just that it's a rock star event in the current market, you actually have an incredible strategy about expanding into other markets, yeah. Regional markets. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So basically we have a number of what we call best practices and products that we can effectively offer these incredible entrepreneurs or founders of these great brands. And it's effectively, whether it's pricing, how to look at pricing, how to do the strategy across the event for 12, 18 months, 3 years. One of the big ones is an expertise in how to bring these brands into other geographies, but at a scale that's never been done before. And frankly, it's a skill. Right? So for example, the lady that runs it, we call it Global Ventures. Her name is Katie Fryatt. She's unbelievable. Her track record is Money 2020 Europe, Money 2020 Asia, ShopTalk Europe, Health Europe. She runs the whole of this because these brands are, we just look, that's a 100-year brand we were just listening to about time. These brands are very special. So it takes a certain skill set to be able to know how to take it and not ruin the magic, not ruin the main event that happens in a particular country, well, predominantly in America.
That actually really is so critical. It's like to launch into other markets, it's very difficult also, and you need to really know how to do it. And even venerable brands have tried to go into, the Middle East or Dubai, and it won't work unless you really have your, feet on the street and the strategy. When you look at a founder-led brand, what separates a real category leader from a hot property with momentum? And when you do find that, how do you integrate that quickly into Hyve, without losing the founder's star power?
Well, look, the way we look at it is every single one, I suppose it's a cliche, but every deal we do, it is very different. Each one's very different, and it's very much tailored to what is the character of the founder that we're buying from, right? So some founders generally don't want, some just want to sell and move on. That's quite rare for us. Normally, founders want to come to us because we know and have had a track record and a history of being able to scale these sustainably, and also then bringing them to other markets. We also have the meetings program. We have a whole host of different products that they may not have and want access to. And so it really just depends. So a number of time that we'll do is these founders will work with for 1 or 2 years, sometimes for a lot longer. Again, I'm going to use John as an example. I've known him since 2012 when we did 2014 when we did our first deal together. We've done a few since. So it really depends on the founder, and we will definitely cater it. But then we're always aligned. That's the most important thing. Are we aligned with where they want to take the brand? Are they aligned with what we might want to do with the brand? We'll do that before any deal is done. We'll work it out together. If we're aligned, we go ahead. Of course, the numbers matter, right? Of course, it has to be financially attractive, and the upside has to be financially attractive. But that's obvious, right? It's more about the alignment, about what happens next. Because for most people, when they launch something, that is their blood, sweat, and tears. I know the mentality. I know what it takes to launch a business. I was very lucky to learn from my father was a great entrepreneur in the sector. I know what it takes for that. So they care where it goes.
Where do you see Hyve in 3 or 4 years?
Well, look, it's fun now, right? Many of you probably don't know the history. The legacy of this business was, again, we started it a long, long time ago, but we were it was a different era then. It was in the early 90s. It was a family business that started from literally my uncle's kitchen. And that was very much centered around opening up of new markets as they opened, new geographies, right? So it was an emerging market business. And that was and has been for a very long time. We then sold it in the late 90s. I came back in 2016. But this was nearly 300 trade shows all across emerging markets, 98%. This is Russia, Central Asia, Turkey, India, Southeast Asia, you name it, right? So this has been a massive transformation, an understanding of where trends are going. Because a lot of what you're also talking about is, future AI and this and that. We spend a lot of time thinking about trends. One of the big trends was geopolitical. It was pretty obvious from the financial crisis that emerging markets were changing, and we're living it today. This is not something that happened just a year ago. This has been building up for years. So anyway, long story short is we basically have exited all those markets. Every single one of those businesses we've sold, right? So out of 300 events, we only have 1 left, right? Every other thing that we have, we've bought and then grown and expanded, and yet we're more than 2 times the size we used to be. So to answer your question, and why I had to say that is because in the next 3 to 5 years, this is the fun bit, right? We've now created this incredible platform of these unbelievable brands in key end markets. We have a whole host of products and suites. We've got a track record with terrific founders and growth. We're consistently, double digit, all that stuff. That's fantastic. But this is now the interesting. This is fun now.
Okay.
Right? You actually finally have a platform on which you can go out and look at other end markets and say, look what we've been able to do with Shop Talk, look what we've been able to do with Health, look what we've been able to do with Manifest, what we've done with Possible, how we've maintained the culture of those amazing brands and then brought them into other markets or just grown it enormously.
Well, we were at CISO, and you brought something up that I thought was really interesting, which is there are certain events or certain industries that are predisposed to doing very well in the matchmaking you
Yes.
know, hosted by or even, you know, meeting context, and then there are others that are not. And you've had some good bets, and you've had some
No,
learnings.
we've learned a lot. We've tried a lot of different things, right? So again, there's a big difference between. I mean, you've all been to a trade fair. You've all seen these, you know, Javits Center or whatever, and stand after stand after stand. That is a trade fair. It's usually tens of thousands of visitors. Most of them come for free. Lasts for 3 or 4 days. They pop in, they pop out. That's a trade fair. There's, you know, hundreds of thousands around the world. That connections that we tried there, so then the difference with a shop talk, for example, or a health, these are very, very senior people. It's 5 to 10,000 usually, 10,000, 12,000 for health, 10,000 for shop talk. They stay for the 3 days, the people. They spend $2,000 to $4,000 to attend the event. They stay for the full 3 or 4 days. So you can have a meetings program that takes people away from their stands or from the content or whatever. And they'll go and they'll actually turn up for the meetings. We tried it, whatever it was, 3 or 4 years ago, at a trade fair, and it doesn't work because people don't leave their stands. People don't, they're not there for the 3 or 4 days of the events. They might come one day, but then it's bad weather, they'll come the next day. So that didn't work, so we pivoted and we tried different types of meeting programs. Now we have something called Connections, which we do specifically for trade fairs. And that really works incredibly well, but the meetings are at the stand. So we've tried lots of different models. You know, is it 15 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? Is it, you know, so it depends on the type of event it is.
I have a question about the monetization or the revenue part with meetings. So when we used to do the meetings, I would always look at your gold dust buyer at the time, and I would actually put a monetary value on how many meetings I would get out of that person.
Okay.
Do you do that?
Yes, basically.
Okay.
So each person that enters into, so again, I apologize, I always use one example, it's just easier, but we have Shop Talk. Out of the 10,000 people, roughly, it's always, the ratio needs to be 30% of these buyers, yeah? Each one of those buyers comes for free, and they get compensation towards their travel, right? So, and of course they want to go because of the content, because of the experience, because of the peer-to-peer networking, and so on and so on. But they also do submit themselves to a number of meetings. So for us, it's 8.
8.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, it depends on not everyone is 8. But for Shop Talk,
right,
it's 8.
Right. You have to have different
different tiers for different shows.
So now AI is coming in and fundamentally changing, or rumor has it, it's fundamentally changing the buyer-seller ecosystem and engagement. Like now, agents are going to be selling to agents, and do you see this impacting, or do you see it actually helping?
No, look, there's no question it will definitely help. I mean, the way that I see it is that, first of all, most of the meetings that we do in the buyer meetings, the numbers are much higher, right? So when we bring the gold dust, these are people, so this is the head of IT for Nike, for example. Whoever is making the budget decisions for that particular retail brand, I mean, these are significant budgets. So that won't be agent to agent. I mean, we have to be realistic. Okay?
Right,
these
true.
are seriously, bigger numbers. So AI will certainly enhance the ability to navigate for those buyers and sellers who are the right and relevant people, for sure. It will make it much better, much simpler, and much more effective. But it's not going to take the place of an actual person who's making a decision on a significant budget. I don't believe that.
So getting back to like how you evaluate, because we have a lot of CEOs in the audience who do a lot of acquisitions, what are the top 5 things you look at in terms of, I'm going to pay attention to this company and continue to look at it as a potential acquisition, and then what's the one red flag? Even if those 5 things were on the table, you'd be like, I'll see you later.
Well, definitely the first thing will be the end market. So what's the sector in which they're running the show? What's the position of that show within that sector? Those are pretty much, sacrosanct. What is the scale of the event in terms of what's the quality and the scale of the person that, if it's an ecosystem event, who's speaking, what level of seniority are they getting at that conference or confex or ecosystem event? Those are all the obvious things, right? Have they captured a significant proportion of that end market? These are obvious things, I suppose. How much of the market penetration have they taken? Is there room for growth, and so on and so on. The red flag is also the same as the green flag, or whatever the expression is, right? It all boils down to the founder that we're buying it from.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have learned definitely the hard way of buying things from certain people, this is a while ago, that if you're not aligned, you shouldn't touch it. Doesn't matter how good it looks. And go in with your eyes open, right? So we have bought, for example, an unbelievable brand, but that was owned by a big corporate. So it wasn't so much about the founder, right? So we knew going in that actually the purpose of buying this was a terrific brand, but the team wasn't great. So we knew going in, and we were very transparent about it, that actually we were going to completely overhaul it. But that's quite rare. All the deals we do predominantly now are usually founder-led. So the character of the founder is really, really, really important.
Jonathan, I think you must have incredible character if he's still in the room. Let's get back to the customer convergence, because that is it's a really smart, interesting play where you're selling access, not a brand. You're not selling an event. You're selling access through these channels.
Through these channels, yes.
Right? Did you have to retrain your sales team, or how did you move into that type of?
No, that's really good. Well, it's constantly evolving, is what I would say, right? So again, a lot of these brands, and again, the way that some of these founders start off, many of them don't even have sales teams. They really focus on if you build it, they will come. You know, the field of dreams. We're in America, I can say that, right? So that's how a lot of people, some founders have thought. Is if you get the right buyers, you get this, you get that, then others will come, right? Huge marketing budgets, whatever. And to be fair, on the whole, that worked for a lot. So, some of the businesses or events we bought have been like that. Then you have to build an outbound sales team. Then, a year and a half later, you evolve it. Then you have key account, enterprise salespeople. Now we're entering into a phase where we have been for the past couple of years, is selling across a particular brand. So Shop Talk, grocery shop. There are multiple Shop Talks. There are multiple grocery shops now. So we have an enterprise sales team that will sell Google across all of them. The next phase for us is then going to Google and saying, right, you're the same Google that will make a decision for e-commerce, but you're the same that will make the decision for retail media, the same for marketing, and so on and so on. So then we'll be elevating that to a more rarefied. So we're constantly evolving.
And you're building franchises.
Yeah.
And that leads actually to a question I have, which is, do you see customers asking for different or more nuanced things from you and your events portfolio than they were before? Is it getting more difficult to serve them?
No. I think you just have to constantly innovate. Look, I've sort of come from the old school thinking of, the Henry Ford line. Like if I ask my customer what they wanted, they say a faster horse, right? So I don't think you can get all the answers in terms of what they want. What you can find out is what's their problem, right? And that what we can do and what we've done and we're doing constantly is solving problems, right? Which is largely connection, right? It's access to buyers, it's access. So we're not just doing it at the event now, we're actually doing it throughout the year. So there's constantly innovating for what is their problem. And their problem is if you're a software solution provider and you want access and you want to sell your product, the challenge you've got is that the days of sales trips across countries are gone because nobody works from an office anymore, right? Or if they do, is it 1 day, is it 2 days, is it 3 days? What used to be a 1-day trip to New York now has to be 4 days. So the cost has gone up a lot, right? So they want more return on their investment. So that's a problem we can solve. And that's what we think of all the time. How do we solve these problems? And that's why we launch different products, whether it's the meetings program, or we just launched, I keep pointing at John, because through health we've launched we're trialing a large number of different things. But there's something called Health Entree, which is access to the gold dust, but throughout the year at hosted dinners. So, and there's multiple different things that we're trying, but we're solving what is their problem. That's how we think.
That was my last question, which is how are you driving community? Because everyone talks about community, but to me a one-time event is not, it's not enough to drive community.
But it used to be.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is ultimately, what are we doing and what problem are we solving? And they want access, and they want it throughout the year. They want more intimate. This is relatively intimate. So they want more intimate gatherings. So we'll start to do more intimate gatherings. We won't run second tier or third tier show. We won't do another repeat of a main event, but we'll do more intimate gatherings because that's what they want at a certain seniority. So what we want to do is effectively go down that whole funnel of a particular end market. And the buyer-seller. That's how we feel.
And we're running out of time, but
So.
it's like you want to own their attention, like their in-person attention. You want to own that
Yes.
on the audience side.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Mark.
That's
And
right.
I
It's a
do have a
pleasure.
gift for you.
Thank you. I'm gonna
Just a little thing for your gold dust.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.